My name is Chris Scott. I'm a filmmaker and photographer here in Tucson, Arizona. I was originally born in Alaska, but I moved down here when I was a kid, and I spent my summers up there, my winters down here growing up. So I went to high school here. I went to Pima and to the U of A, where I went to film school. And back then, we were still shooting on tape, and I was a pretentious film school student, so I never bought a DSLR camera until about 7 years ago, when I had to buy a DSLR that shot video and took pictures.
I've known Chris for a number of years. He's been a tenant of mine for a long time. And I knew he was an accomplished photographer and videographer.
It's not a huge adjustment. Video and photography are kind of the same thing. There's f-stops, there's shutter speeds, there's ISO. It's all the basic principles of capturing the image properly. But just adding movement in video is the only thing that's a little different than in photography. The thing that drew me most to photography was working with actors, with films and videos, and I kind of wanted to learn how to communicate with them better and get better expressions and get a better performance. So I figured if I can direct someone to tilt their head or smile with their eyes, it would help me communicate better with actors in the future for film projects.
I never ever thought that I would model because I thought that I was too fat to model, and I also thought that I wasn't very photogenic.
Well, I am wearing a shirt that says pussy, so I let it all hang out. If I am doing a photo shoot and all my kibbles and bits aren't intact, and there's a dirty little oyster in there, it doesn't matter, you just roll with it and you make magic happen. I'm serious.
When I'm working with models, I try to make them feel like they're in a space where they can try weird and wacky things. I try to mimic the look I'm going for. I try to make like the wacky looks and the way I have them position their heads and their shoulders and all this stuff so they can mirror me, so they see that they're not being silly by themselves.
It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good.
Whenever I am posing, I think about music, either music that's in my head or the music that's playing, and I choose my posing to be a dance. I try to make it seem as elegant as possible. And I'm moving like a ballerina, and I make these just subtle movements, so I'm not jerky in front of a camera.
It's about connecting with someone or getting them to a space where they feel like their insecurity is not the only thing I'm focusing on, even though it's probably the only thing they're focusing on. Composition and lighting, those are all unnatural things, so connecting with the person I think is the thing that people connect with.
I thought it would be an interesting thing for him to have a photo shoot at the loft while it was under construction, because there were stainless steel stud framing, and that was an interesting point in the construction for him to do that. 3 weeks later, it would be covered in sheetrock and dust, and it wouldn't be interesting, and before that, the steel studs weren't up, so the vertical shape of those framing structures were interesting to me.
It's gotta be against the law to look this damn good.
I mentally prepare myself by not trying to overthink it and kind of going with the flow and trying to figure out what are the best expressions and looks and compositions for the situation or the location that we're at.
We also just happened to have some serendipity because we had a couple of steel sculptures in the building at the time, and Chris used those as props for his models.
So everybody sort of had this sort of black, dark look. And I said, well, why don't we all pretend we're vampires? So Chris took us all upstairs and we found this construction piece, I don't know, like a scaffolding. We thought that everybody should kind of crawl into it. And a lot of the models there were younger than I was, so I was saying, I will be your mother vampire. And we just sort of went with it. And then there was one shot where I crawled to a virgin sacrifice in this photo shoot for this documentary. And I was the vampire mother in this industrial warehouse.
But I try to keep the mood light and fun and non-judgmental, and we usually get something good because we're relaxed and we don't feel that pressure. Tucson is a good home base for me. I feel most at home here. New York and LA, they're too busy, they're too big. For the most part, I've always tried to keep being artist first, trying to be creative first. I feel like that's more satisfying in life. I think the difference between a good photo and a memorable photo is not composition, not lighting, but a connection with the subject matter. If it's a person, feeling like you know that person, or that person's intriguing or interesting, or someone you'd like to get to know. Or if it's like a genuine emotion that's being portrayed in the portrait.
I thought the drones were fantastic. I loved that whole scene. And we flew them inside and outside the buildings, and we had some pan shots and move away shots with the models, and Chris doing his photo shoot, so the drones were the bomb. And the models were great. It was a great experience, and it was a great exposure for the 8th Avenue Lofts.